Okay, hello everyone. Uh, Thank you for joining this session. Um, in this session, we'll have this agenda to follow. We'll start with the introduction of the topic that what exactly it is when we talk about AI tools for researchers. Then we'll go into more specifics, and that would be AI tools for literature review, then AI tools for paper writing, then AI tools for publication and impact, and then what journalists say about the use of AI tools, and then we will conclude the session. So when it comes to the use of AI, what are the different terms that researchers use in for what purposes AI is generally used in research? So it is used for the analysis of data. It is used for the writing of research papers, research grants, research proposals. It is used for research summarization. It is used for literature review assistance and so many other things for which we use AI tools. So this is going to be the focus in this presentation. We are going to talk about that, how we can use these AI tools to help us in different tasks associated with research. Now, this is another example of irresponsible use of AI. So in this example, Midjourney, which is a tool for generating images, it has been used to create an image. So we basically wanted to create this image, but Midjourney created this image. So there is a huge difference between these two, and perhaps the prompt is not used in the correct way, or it is the person does not know how to use Midjourney, and that is why the content that has been generated, it is incorrect, it is irrelevant. So we need to be careful that how we use these tools, and we use them responsibly, and we also use them correctly with in terms of getting more accurate results from them. Now, at the start of this session, I mentioned that AI can help us in many ways when we are doing research, but at the same time, it brings us certain challenges as well, and we need to be mindful of those challenges. So the first one is about effective use. Okay, so there is a possibility for a mismatch between the potential and actual use of generative AI. It means that we only need to use it at our advantage. Like the examples that I've shown previously, that is a blind or irresponsible use of these tools. And that is what we definitely need to avoid. The second thing is about the development of skills. So if we are only relying on these tools, in that case, we will not develop the ability to think critically and to write well. So we should not be using these tools to completely replace the human. We should be using them to help us to facilitate our research. Because if we are 100% relying on these tools, in that case, we as a researcher, we are not developing, we are not growing our skills. The ability to think critically and to do critical analysis is very important for researchers. For example, if someone give me a research piece, I should be able to identify the strengths of that research, and I should be able to identify the weaknesses of that research piece. If I don't have that ability, or if I do not develop that ability, then I am not a good researcher. So if we are relying fully on AI, in that case, we are hitting the learning curve of ourselves as a researcher. Next is the reliability and reproducibility. So what happens is that the AI tools, sometimes their answers are not correct. They can give different responses for the same question. So we need to keep that human loop or human eyes on the top of what is produced by AI tools. Next is about the security. So sometimes we might need to upload some of our data, or sometimes we might need to feed data to the AI tool, in which case we need to be careful not to share any critical or any sensitive information to the AI tool. And lastly, about academic integrity. So it's quite possible that if we just do copy and pasting, our written work would be plagiarized, or it might be flagged as plagiarized, and that eventually can lead to a very big problem when the journal or a conference rejects the paper just on plagiarism basis. Now, while we have looked at the different challenges and the different shortcomings of using AI tools in research, now we flip the coin and we look at the other side, and that is the potential or the advantages that AI has for researchers. So the first one is literature review. AI can help us a lot in conducting literature review. It can help us to speed up the process of literature review, at the same time doing a better quality literature review. It can help us in writing and polishing our research papers. It can help us in publication and impact. So these are the three areas that we are going to focus in our presentation or in this webinar today. So we start with the literature review. And when it comes to literature review, so firstly, let me quickly show what is a literature review. So in a literature review, we study the existing literature, which means that the papers that have already been published in that particular area, we pick them and we try to go through those 70, 75 papers and try to understand the trends, patterns in that particular field of study. Now, when it comes to literature review, there are three main areas where we need to work. The first is identifying the right set of papers. The next one is to understand those papers and understand that what research have been presented in each of the papers. And lastly is the analysis and synthesis, that we extract the information, then we analyze, and as I mentioned, that we look at that how to identify trends and patterns in that data extracted from the papers. So in the next few slides, we'll go through each of these areas and we'll see that which AI tools can help us to, for example, find the right set of papers, help us to consume the information, and help us to analyze and synthesize information. So the first tool that we are going to talk today is SCISPACE. Now, this tool, it can help us to identify the papers, and also it can help us to get summarized answers from those papers. So if you look at this figure, there is a query given here: how do generative AI tools improve research writing productivity? And then there are certain papers that have been identified. For example, this is a paper, another paper, around 20 papers have been identified. And here are the key insights from those papers, and here are the methods used in those papers, and here are the results. Now, if we have to do it manually, what happens is that in that case, we have to, let's suppose we have 20 papers, we have to read every one of them to understand the insights, to extract the methods that they have used, and to extract the key results. But with a tool like SCISPACE, we can identify these papers, and with a single click, we can extract the relevant information or the information that we need from these papers. Now, this is another tool, RDiscovery, and in this one, you see that we can set personalized recommendation and alerts. So, for example, if I am working in an area about the impact of climate change on global economy, so what I'll do is that I'll put these terms in RDiscovery, and then each time a new paper is published in that area, so RDiscovery will send me an alert. Now that way I'll remain on the top in my field, because I know that what research has been getting published. So I do not miss any papers, and that way I identify and I automatically access the papers that are relevant to my research area. Now, RDiscovery, it also has a Chrome plugin, and this plugin is designed to support your research from anywhere, anytime. So you have it, and then through that you can, it can help you in reading papers. It can help you in summarizing papers, and at the same time, as I mentioned previously, that it can help you to get alerts about the papers that are relevant to you. Now, if we look at this one, so generative AI research, this is another feature of our discovery, and it can help you to get correct answers from around 250 million academic papers. So if we look at this example here, if you can follow my cursor. So the question is, does COVID-19 vaccine cause cardiovascular fatalities? And our discovery has given an answer, but the important point is that it has baked its answer with evidence. So you see it has given a reference here, a reference here, a reference here. So for the information that it is giving, unlike ChatGPT or unlike those generative AI tools, what our discovery is doing is that it is making its answers with proper citations, references, that from where it has taken a particular statement. And that is very important for researchers, because as a researcher, we rely on evidence, we rely on data, and having answers which are baked by evidence and baked by references is something that we can confidently use in our research and confidently use in our presentations. Now, this is another tool when it comes to identifying the right set of papers for literature review, and that is Research Rabbit. Now, what it can do for you is that it can do backward and forward paper trials to find related papers. So if you look at this figure here, so let's suppose this is the paper Han 2015. What this tool can does is that it can identify that what are the papers that this paper is based on. So it, of course, when we do some research, we are basing it on a certain set of previous research. Okay, so this identifies those papers for you, and at the same time, it identifies the papers that are based on the existing paper. So it looks at the papers, the previous papers, and also the subsequent papers related to that paper. So that way, you can visually see that how this paper links with the other papers published before it and the papers published after this particular paper. So this could be very insightful and can help you in identifying, for example, research gaps, in identifying how papers are linked with each other in this particular area. Another feature of our discovery is listening to full text papers and audio summaries. So this tool, it is very helpful in that regard, that if, like, for example, some people, they don't want to read papers. They prefer to listen to the audio version of the paper. So for that purpose, our discovery is very good. And not just that, sometimes in our commute, like for example, if we are going from office to our home, on the way, we can just listen to a paper or to the summary of a paper and try to reflect on it, how it relates to my research. So that is another very interesting and very useful feature of our discovery. Now, as far as the consumption of information is concerned for literature review, another tool that we are looking into is called Scholarcy. Now, this tool, it can help to extract specific details from the papers, and at the same time, it can summarize articles for you in a very good way. And thirdly, it can do comparative analysis. So it has this feature of flashcards through which you can extract information. Then it can automatically generate a summary of the paper for you. So the summary could be like, whatever you wanted. It offers very customizable summaries. So let's suppose you don't want to read a 40-page paper. In that case, you can say that, okay, I just only want a 2-page summary of the paper. So this tool, it will summarize the paper for you. And then it will also do comparative analysis, that how the papers are related to each other, whether a particular set of papers, they contradict a statement or they support a particular research statement. Now, the next one is chat with PDF. So for instance, if you have a certain question based on a paper and you don't want to read the whole paper for just finding that one niche information, you can use Adobe Acrobat, and with that you can just ask a question, and the information, the answer will be provided to you based on that particular paper. So if you see here, so there is a question written here: what are the key product matrices discussed in this paper? And then this tool has just provided that specific answer. Instead of making you read the entire paper, you just get the answer to your question only. Now, the next one is about reading abstracts, highlights, and summaries for the paper on the go. Now, this is again the discovery. It provides this feature to you that you can only, for example, if you want to prefer to read only the abstract or read the highlights and summary, so that can help you with this task. So that way you don't have to go through the entire paper, and it can speed up your process of extracting or relevant information from that paper, or deciding that whether, for example, this paper is relevant for my research or it is not relevant. Now, this is another tool when it comes to this synthesis or analysis of the data for literature review, and it's called Litmaps. Now, Litmaps, what it does is that it can help you to generate a citation map for the papers, and at the same time, if you look at this graph, it's very interesting. So when it draw the papers in that space, it can show you which are the most recent papers in your research area and what are the papers that have been most cited in that particular research area. So that way you see the which are the most recent, and at the same time you see the quality of papers, which are the best quality of papers, because mostly top quality papers are cited more as compared to low quality papers. Now we move to the second part, and that is about writing and polishing. So the first one we focused on literature review. Now we are in the second one, and we look at that how AI tools can help us in writing and polishing our research papers. So we start with this particular tool, which is called Audio Pin. And what this tool can do for you is that it can record, transcribe, and summarize audio notes. So for example, if I say something, it can record it, it can then transcribe, and it can summarize for me. So it's also used very much often in the meetings as well. The next one is Notebook LLM. So this particular tool, it can again summarize and find information that matters to you by analyzing all your references. So you have a bunch of references, and then you have certain questions. You use this tool, and it will dig out the relevant information for you. The third tool in this category is Paperpal. Now, Paperpal offers a lot of features for writing research papers. For example, it has a feature of outline assist. So what it does is that if you want to write, let's suppose, the introduction of your paper, you just give some basic information to this tool, and it will generate a very good outline for you. And then you can work on that outline to write your entire introduction. So that way it speeds up your writing process, while at the same time it doesn't kind of hit your learning curve, because it's not giving you the entire content, it's just giving you the outline of the introduction section. Then Paperpal also has a feature called rewrite. And with rewrite, what you can do is that you can paraphrase your text, you can trim, shorten the text, you can make it academic, and you can use more synonyms. So for example, when we have something like this and we say trim, so it will reduce the number of words. So initially it was 46, then it was 33, but it does not change the meaning of it. It just reworded in a way that it takes less number of words, but convey the same message. Paraphrasing, so if you are, for example, not, let's say, good in writing, and you write something roughly, and then you ask Paperpal to convert it and rephrase it in a better way for you, and then make it academic. So it's the same. If your writing is not very scientific, very academic, in that case you can write, and then Paperpal can make it sound more academic for you. So it has a limitation to rewrite no more than chunk of 300 words at a time. And you need to incorporate terms, phrases more suited to academic writing. Now, the next one is that of what is called choose from right angles or provide custom instructions of what to write next. So when you when it generates an output, when Paperpal generates an output, you put it in your editor, and in that time you can say accept, you can say contrast this, you can say make it professional, make it concise, expand it further. So this is again, when you are writing, it is helping you to sort of write, on the go. You write something and then you want to know some statement which can contrast the statement. So again, on the go, it helps you in writing. And then this is another interesting feature of Paperpal that can help you in your writing, and that is when you ask it a question, then it gives you an answer, but with citations. So that way you can, if you think the citation is relevant for you, you can just add it immediately to your citation library, and then you can use it at a later point as well in your writing. So this way you build up a library that you can use in your research at later stages as well. Now, when it comes to tables and figures, this is a tool called Julius AI. Now, Julius, it is used very often for the analysis of quantitative data. So what you do is that you have a file, let's suppose you have an Excel sheet, and you upload that sheet to Julius AI and then write a prompt that, for example, okay, draw bar charts or scattered plots based on this data. And it generates these very visually very appealing diagrams. So you don't have to use, for example, Python or R for drawing these figures. You just upload the data, ask it, and it will immediately generate the required kind of graphs for you. And at the same time, provides you the code as well. So it is more a transparent process of how it produces the results. The next tool in this category is Mind the Graph. Now, this is a tool that can help you in improving your visualization and improving your diagrams. So this is without using this tool, and this is with using this tool. So you can see the difference. Again, it can help you in AI-generated illustrations suitable from an academic point of view. So this is all you can do with this tool called Mind the Graph. Now, lastly, about the polishing of your research paper. So as I mentioned earlier, that Paperpal, it offers quite a lot of features when it comes to writing of research papers. Like, for example, here, if there are grammatical issues or typo issues in your paper, they can be immediately highlighted by Paperpal, and then you can just click on accept if it makes sense to you, and then it will immediately fix the typos and grammar issues. Similarly, before you go and you upload your paper to a journal or you submit it to a journal, it is always a good idea to check for plagiarism. So Paperpal, it also has a plagiarism checking ability. You can always check and see whether if there is any accidental or intentional plagiarism in your manuscript. So it can generate a report like this, and then you can work on the parts which are flagged as plagiarized. Now we are in the third category. So we covered tools for literature review, we covered tools for paper writing, and now we are in the last category, that is about publication and impact, which means that what are the tools, AI tools, that can help us in the publication of a research paper and making an impact as well, how we can communicate and visualize our research to make it more impactful. So in this category, the first one we have is researcher life. So this one, it can help us to identify journals that match the content scope. So many a times, what happens is that when we write a research paper, we are confused as to which journal we should submit it, because there are a lot of journals available. So this tool, it can help us that when we put, for example, the abstract of our paper, so it can help us to identify areas that, okay, for example, identify journals that these are the most relevant journals for this particular paper. So it has a discovery platform with 43,000 plus journals indexed. So it gives you all the information about the journal, that okay, what kind of topics are covered in this one, and so on and so forth. So it can help you in making a better decision as to which particular journal you should submit your paper. It can also help you in comparing the journals. So again, this is something giving you insight as to which is the most suitable journal for the publication of your research paper. And this is also an important factor for researchers, because sometimes we are in rush. Like for example, as a PhD student whose thesis defense is in near, in that case, the PhD student want the paper to be published as soon as possible. So this one, like for example, it gives you a tentative time, that how much time it is going to take to publish in a particular journal. Now, this is before you go and submit your paper, you first check the plagiarism, and then you also go and you have these language and technical checks to make sure that the paper does not get disk rejected. Because if the quality of the paper is very poor from the writing point of view, in that case, the paper can automatically get rejected as well, in what is called disk rejected. So the editor will not send it to a reviewer, the editor will himself reject the paper. So if you look at this list, there are so many different kind of checks that Paperpal do for you, so that your paper is free from all these errors. Like for example, author's email, is it there or not, list of authors, keywords, word count, etc. So all the things that we sometimes miss, like for example, we may not adhere to the length of the journal, or we may miss, like for example, the emails of the authors. Those kind of things are checked automatically by Paperpal to make sure that your paper adheres to the guidelines of the journal where you plan to submit your paper. So yeah, as I mentioned, that what it does is that it goes and it checks for these very common errors in your paper, and then it makes sure that these errors are removed before you submit your paper. Now, this is another interesting and very useful feature of Paperpal. So when we want to submit a paper to a journal, or even to a special issue of a journal, what happens is that we have to write a cover letter to the editor, that okay, for example, I'm submitting this paper is about blah blah blah, so we would love to have it published in this particular journal. Paperpal can help you in writing that cover letter. So if you see, this is it has generated a sample cover letter, and it is based on the paper that you already worked on using Paperpal. So again, it is something that otherwise would take time from you, but with Paperpal, you can automate that process to a larger extent. And lastly, about the improving the dissemination and impact with AI-generated plain language summaries. So what happens is that when we write a paper, oftentimes the paper is written in very technical terms, which is not very easy to understand for many people. But this tool, Kudus, what it does is that it can convert that very technically written paper into very plain and easy to understand language. So if you want to share it with someone, for example, you want to share it on social media, let's suppose on LinkedIn. So in that case, this tool, it can write it in very easy to understand terms, and then when you share it, the people whom you share it with, they can easily understand your paper, even if they are not technical people. And as was mentioned earlier, that when you are sharing a paper outside, and especially sharing it with non-technical people, if you present it in the form of an infographic or a poster, then it becomes much more easier to understand, and it can resonate very well with your audience. So for creating that kind of illustrations and infographics, Mind the Graph is a good tool, and it can help you to convert your paper from a textual form into a visual form. So if you look at the statistics, 17% of publishers and 70% of journals had released guidelines. Now, this is something important. So before you submit your paper, it is always a good idea to look at the publishers' guideline that, for example, whether they accept it, whether they not accept it. While we just discussed that most of them they accept it, but what are their specific guidelines? Like, for example, let me say you just declare it. Are there any other guidelines? So that is something, for that reason, we need to make sure that we read the guideline of the publishing venue, for example, the journal, before we submit our paper. Now, while we have discussed all the different areas where AI tools can help us, we need to be careful in a few ways as well. The first one is that we need to remember that AI is there to support us. It does not replace us. So we need to use it to our advantage, and not that it kind of badly impact our reputation or our learning. We need to also be mindful of biases and limitations. It has some limitations I already showed you in those slides. We need to not trust AI blindly, and then we need to use it to get ideas, but we need to put our own human touch to it to make sure that those ideas make sense to us as well. And we need to preserve the academic integrity, making sure that we do not claim that something written by AI is our work. And then we also need to be aware of the plagiarism, because there are these tools now which to some level detect that, okay, whether a text is written by AI or it is written by a human. We also need to be careful about not feeding very sensitive information to these AI tools. And lastly, we need to keep ourselves up to date about the use of AI, because it's a very rapidly evolving field. So just to summarize, so AI tools designed for academia, that is what we discussed. We looked at its advantages, and also we looked at that where we need to be careful. And then the second point is about human plus AI. That is something we should be doing. We should use these tools to our advantage. We should not use them to completely replace us. And then we need to have clear and transparent policies. And more importantly, we need to follow those policies in full spirit in order to make sure that these tools are used in the right way and that the use of these tools have been declared. So I thank you all. And now if you have any questions, so I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you see the questions on the screen?
Yeah, so the first question is that if I use AI to generate graphs or figures from my analysis, is it not learning the material, and will it affect my decision when I check for plagiarism later? So if you are, it's a good question. For graphs and for figures, it is unlikely that it will be considered plagiarism, because I have personally not seen any tool which can detect whether a graph or figure is made by AI, because in any way we use tools for making graphs and for making figures. For example, some people use R, some people use Minitab, some people use Python to make graphs. So these tools, what they do is that they simplify that process and make it more less technical. So as far as making of graphs and figures is concerned, I don't think that it would be flagged as plagiarized.
Thank you.
So the next question is there any AI tool to transform manuscript from A journal to B journal? There is no tool that can 100% do that, but for example, if you want to transform the text, like let's suppose journal A has a page limit of 14 pages, but journal B has a limit of let's say 10 pages. In that case, we can use tools like, for example, we can use Paperpal to trim the text. So what that would do is that it will bring the paper down from 14 to 10 pages, but it will not affect the message conveying, because it is only trimming the text. It is not changing the meaning of the content that we want to convey to a larger extent. Of course, not 100%. But as far as converting paper from journal A to journal B and having a tool for that, I have not come across any such tool which can do 100% of this job. So the next question is, what do you think about ChatGPT as the research tool compared to the tools you have introduced in today's lecture? So, of course, ChatGPT is used very predominantly. However, when it comes to research, it has very evident limitations. For example, one of the basic disadvantage of using ChatGPT is that it generates fake citations. So you ask it, okay, I need 10 citations in the area of, let's suppose, climate change. It will generate that, and then you go and you check them on Google Scholar, there would be no such citation. So that's one disadvantage of using ChatGPT. Then the second one is that ChatGPT is a very big uh, trained model. So it is generic, it is not specific to research. But then tools like, for example, Paperpal or the other AI tools that we discussed, when they're also using large language models, but they are trained on very specific piece of data that is only for researchers. So my view is that ChatGPT is good for generic questions, but when it comes to specifics, then the tools that I discussed, those are certainly better research tools. So the next question is, when we use AI tools for writing manuscripts and preparing figures, do we need to mention that we used AI tools in the manuscript? Yes, so that is what I think I already mentioned, that we need to look at the guidelines of the journal. So most journals, they would require that, yes, you need to declare that if you have used any AI tools. So my suggestion to you would be that before you submit your paper, just look at the guidelines of the journal. And most often the case would be that you have to declare it that you have used AI tools for, let's suppose, writing or for preparing figures. The next question is, what AI tools do you use when reviewing previous research? Yeah, so when there are tools like, for example, there is a tool called TCFI. So what TCFI does is that it looks at it reviews your paper for you, that, okay, for example, is it good or is it not good? Then there is another tool called Review It. And Review It, what it does is that it in a very nice way identifies the strengths and weaknesses of any paper for you, be that your paper as well. Let's suppose you want to submit a paper to a journal, you put it there and you see that, okay, what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses. So it in a way do critical analysis for your paper. And then there are tools like, for example, connected papers, which can show you that how your paper is positioned with respect to previous research. So these are some of the tools that I use when it comes to reviewing previous research. The question is there a tool that can generate a table to be inserted in the paper? This is a good question. So currently, I don't think there is any tool that can generate a table other than, of course, I know that ChatGPT, it can generate tables, but when it comes to specific research tools, I have not come across any. However, there is one company who is building a tool, and I work with them, and they are working on this thing uh, to generate tables and figures for research papers, but the tool certainly will take some time to come out into the market. But at the moment, I'm not aware of any tool that can generate tables. The next question is that, could you recommend AI for translating large text, not for publication, but for personal use? So for translation of text, I think that Paperpal also offers this feature that you can convert from one language to another. But generally, I think you should check most of these tools, they have this feature of translation. So I personally have not used it because I mostly work in in English, but I believe that these tools, they have support for translating from one language to another. Like, for example, I think Paperpal has, Scholarcy also has that feature. So you can check most of these tools, they have this feature of translation. So the next question is, what is the reliability of current AI detection tools, and would you recommend any reliable AI detection tools? Yeah, that's a good question. The problem is that many of them, they claim that they are detecting it with a high accuracy, that whether something is written by AI or not. The problem is that it's limited. In another challenge that they are facing is that when something is generated by AI, then there are tools which can humanize that text. Like, for example, there's a tool called Humanizer. And when you put text generated by, let's suppose, ChatGPT into it, it will make it humanized. So it will already bring down the AI generated angle, and it will make it more human. So the tool detecting whether it's written by AI or not, it would fail in that case. So just to answer briefly, while there are claims that these tools can detect very accurately whether something is written by AI or not, there are also solutions for to bypass that kind of detection through tools which make your text more human-like. Do we have any other questions?
No, Dr. Ram, I think we have answered all the questions. Thank you for the nice lecture. And thank you for answering all those questions. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you all the participants who joined us. Thank you all.